Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to come and join me today. My name is Scott Lawrence. I'm the Director or Senior Director of Product Management here at Klipfolio. Now, I've been working with Hubspot for off and on for a while, but I know that the team who has joined, you guys, all have been working with it for probably longer than I have. In fact, this whole webinar is geared towards Klipfolio customers who have been working with or have access to HubSpot as a data source. Some quick housekeeping. Everyone is on mute. We are going to be doing a Q&A at the end, and you can submit questions for the Q&A via the console. There should be a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to use that at any time. But to help us get started, I'd like to understand a little bit more about who is here. If you would, take a quick look. I've got two questions that I'm posing up here. The first one is around just helping us understand what business area you guys are working with, primarily when you think about Klipfolio. Are you primarily building dashboards for marketing? Is it for sales, services, support, finance, operations, those kinds of areas? The second question that I've got up there is just related to partners. Are you using the client features and functionality within Klipfolio or not? Or are you building dashboards for yourselves rather than building dashboards for clients? I'll give you guys a moment just to try and vote here, and then we will end the poll and share some of the results. All right, it looks like people are coming in and putting things in. That's fantastic. All right, I'm going to close the poll, so last chance to take a vote. Excellent. And just to share some of the results with you guys. So just to give you a sense, it does look like marketing is the big area, though sales is in there as well. And it looks like mostly we're getting partners coming in and sharing things. So we're using the client functionality, which is fantastic. Thank you very much. All right, so high level what we're going to do today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what people are doing. I continually get that question from people about, what are other people doing? How can I get done faster? So I wanted to share some insights we've gathered from looking at the data about what customers have been doing with Klipfolio and HubSpot. Then share a little bit about what we've done to date about helping you get to using and leveraging HubSpot data faster. But then a quick introduction of power metrics, especially for those who may not have been exposed to that yet, and how that works with HubSpot and things that we've done there in advance. And then just to talk briefly about things beyond HubSpot, because we know nothing's ever in isolation. And then our Q&A, like I said, there should be a button on your screen where you can submit questions by chat. Right. Before we dive into things, I did want to say thank you. I've been with Klipfolio for about 5 years, a little bit more than that. And I've spoken with many customers and partners, and I've been able to participate in the growth that's happened here. Up to over 1 million clips and visualizations that are being used on dashboards, and over a 10-fold increase of customers and companies using Klipfolio. But amazing how many everyday people are actually working with Klipfolio. Helps me realize that we are actually hitting some of the mission to be able to make Klipfolio, or basically decision-making with data, something for everyday people. But the big thing I wanted to thank you for was all the feedback and engagement. And you coming to participate in this event is a great testament to that. We love hearing about where you're having challenges, what kinds of new opportunities you're seeing, things that you'd like to see us evolve with the product, but also hearing things that we're doing right. And it's great to hear about feedback on new power metrics and what we're doing there, but also that you're talking beyond product to what we're doing with the support and sales teams as well. So again, a big thank you for all your support and contributions today. Okay. As I said, I get a lot of questions from people about what are other companies doing? How can I get there faster and start working with it? And when we look at specific services like HubSpot, I do look at you guys as the experts. You've been playing around and working with HubSpot and these services a lot longer than we have at times. And when I dug under the covers to look at what are customers doing with Klipfolio and HubSpot, I wanted to look at which APIs, which areas of HubSpot are there. And we all know that HubSpot's got that great focus on customers, but they've got 3 hubs they're working with: marketing, sales, and service. And we're actually seeing people are going across all of those. The analytics is the biggest endpoint that's being used, or API. And it's one of the 30 plus. Well, I've actually gone and counted more than 40 on the API documentation, though a few of those look like they might have been deprecated. But it does mean that we're getting a lot of analytics requests and queries being sent through. Then deals, content, contacts. It really gets around to, it's a big effort or focus around marketing. So things like sales, things like leads, looking at going through the funnel of how people come through, to getting into deals and what's getting closed and contacts, as well as some of the content people are working with. So it's been great to try and see and validate where people are using things. And this is just the top most used APIs that we've been working with in the HubSpot world. There are more, right? But what this has turned into is literally thousands of data sources that you have been working with and building, touching HubSpot as a service. And based on that and some of the inputs we get from people, we've identified HubSpot as one of those top services that we work with and that our customers want. Literally thousands of data sources helps us with validating where we're trying to go. The challenge that we've heard from lots of our customers is there are lots of APIs, and many of those APIs have a lot of differences between them, and they are all returning things like in a JSON structure and format. So one of the things we've been trying to do is help accelerate that by pre-building content, right? So we have 15 pre-built clips that primarily touch on things like deals, content, contacts, sales, basically reflecting the endpoints that our customers are trying to connect to. We've also pre-built about 10 data sources so that you can quickly get to data in the HubSpot world. And we find that people typically use these as templates to get a starting point to be able to get to data they may want to work with. So we've invested to try and help make things a little bit easier. And we're going to continue doing things and going a little bit further, right? The next piece that we want to touch on is around, power metrics. So what I wanted to do is start looking at, have you been working with and playing with power metrics? So if you wouldn't mind, just another quick poll to understand, have you tried power metrics? Have you started playing with them? Do you actually know what they are? If you could just give me some feedback. What I'd love to do is give that as context to go through the next of it. So I'm going to close the poll. And generally what it looks like is, they're still new. So while some of you have had access to and played with power metrics, looks like it's still fairly new for some of you. All right, thank you for sharing your insights. So just to give you a quick insight, when we're talking about investing and making things easier, we're doing it in a combination of ways. One of them is the content that we built out, that we just walked through. But a bigger area is actually looking at how do we make the product easier and more effective for people, right? And some of the feedback we keep getting is trying to make this a lot more usable for people who are less technical. And that's one of the areas that we've been investing in. Power metrics will help with a lot of that. So to give you a sense of the comparison, you're all familiar with clips, right? Powerful, flexible, you can build your custom content, build in interactivity with input controls, you can add multiple components, indicators, and more, right? So a great way to be able to flexibly create your custom thing. Fantastic when you're building out reports that you want to share, putting things up on a big screen or a wallboard. But I've had, even in a recent conversation with a partner, he said he spent a morning building out their dashboard, went out and talked to their subject matter experts or the business team and said, hey, here's what we've got. And the first thing that came up was a question that said, oh, great, I'd love to see that data by month or for last month. And while it didn't take long for him to build out his dashboard, he said he still had to go back and do some work to be able to make that happen. Now let's shift gears and look at power metrics. Power metrics is built up storing data, like it stores the information in the history, but it's done in a structured way where we understand more of the context underneath the data. Clips access pretty much any data, but the structure is always dependent on what you brought in. With a power metric, because it's being brought in and stored in a structured way, we can do more with it. We can build in that interactivity with common filters. So you can, just by the very nature of a power metric, be able to look at the history, change the time frame, look at it month over month, do a comparison all that do very flexibly, even addressing some of the things people have been asking for related to clips, like having a dynamic series where I've got a different segment or bar or line based on the values that are in a column or in a dimension within the data. Right, that's a huge piece that people have been looking at, and we built that into what we've done with Power Metrics, and all of that without having to dive into formulas. The intent is to give you some more interactive, flexible way of interacting with this and working with the data and the visualization quickly. Give you some more of that exploration while you're actually looking at your data. Right, feedback we're getting is people are loving the simplicity, and it is something that could help with getting to those non-technical people. Right. So what we've done, as I said, not just focused on functionality, but we've also looked at how can we pre-build things. So while Power Metrics leverages and takes advantage of our ability to connect to hundreds of services out there and start leveraging modeling to prepare data for getting into Power Metrics, we also wanted to pre-build some Power Metrics and make that available. For HubSpot in particular, we pre-built 25 Power Metrics that'll help you for getting going quickly, but also in addition to building out your custom Power Metric. So with that, I'd like to get us out of slides for a bit and get into starting to work with the actual product itself. Right, so here we are in Power Metrics, right, taking a look at things. And here's a list of all the Power Metrics I happen to have in the account that I'm working with. Right, and as I said, if you're going to build a new Power Metric, simply click on it, see the list of very common things you would have seen when trying to look at data sources within Klipfolio to date, right? All the services that we're working with. But if I go down to HubSpot, there's that list of 25 pre-built Power Metrics that we've already created for you as that starting point. And they touch, subscribers, content. They look at emails, look at marketing activity, also getting into deals and deals won. So we'll go in and say we're going to do contacts by source. I've previously connected to HubSpot, so I'm going to just go and leverage that authentication I already had with HubSpot. And in the background, what it's doing is we're actually generating and creating the data source. We're leveraging an API call into the HubSpot data. We've created a model on top of that, and what we're doing then is importing and connecting to the data. So we've now got that data from HubSpot already built in. So rather than play around with things here, which I can do right away, or edit that metric, Power Metric itself, I'm going to just go and add it to a dashboard and start showing you what we can do with this. Right? And anytime you're sharing or adding things to dashboard, if the dashboard is shared, I'll also be sharing that with whoever has access to the dashboard, which is fantastic. Right? So I'm just going to quickly duplicate this. So the opportunity here is to be able to leverage one metric and be able to use that Power Metric with multiple different ways of visualizing it. So I can go and configure each one of these to look slightly different, to give me a slightly different perspective on this, whether I want to configure it and show numbers, or if I want to show the actual data itself, we could look at it as a table, right? I can look at it as a heat map, tree map. I can even look at it as saying, I want to look at this as a waterfall. Each of these gives me a way of quickly being able to see some insights, and even adding filters where I can say I want to add a filter that can apply across all of these right away. So quickly giving you that flexibility to see this in a different way. Right, so we're going to just save that untitled dashboard with all the changes we've made. And there you've got that dashboard that we made quickly with one Power Metric to give me some slightly different insights. And I can change the time frames and more with it there. But more fun is if we start looking at this with more data in it. So I've already built a dashboard that I included some Power Metrics from those templates, which had sessions by source, leads, and so on. I was looking at this as more of a lead funnel. Right, and looking down, I can see what the leads look like, getting into different ways of visualizing the data that's in here as well, to show you a little bit more with some data in. But what I also built into this was not just multiple ways of viewing the same visualization. I also wanted to then take a look at calculated metrics in here, where I've actually done a calculation to get the conversion between sessions and leads. Right? And then leads and opportunities. What I've noticed is a gap in here, Before I jump over there though, just to give you a sense, I can still go in and leverage and take advantage of this to change the timeframes that I'm working with. That gets applied across all of the different visualizations, right? Go back to saying it's the last 14 days. I can also go in and add a filter where I can see right away that in the leads, I've got some leads that have got a highlight for referrals, emails, and paid. Let's go in and just say I want to look at emails, paid, and referrals, and quickly filter down to see if I look just at those, I can focus in on those to see what's the impact across all the metrics that we've got in here. All right. Now, back to where I was talking about with the power metrics and the calculated power metric is I am missing one. So opportunities to 1. I'd like to see what that win rate would look like. So let's build a calculated metric. So build the calculated power metric and literally start typing it in. So this is great for giving you some opportunity to create new calculations, right? I've seen people who've got multiple different ad platforms as an example, where they've done ads on Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, and more. And what they then want to do is look at their spend across all those different platforms. And they'll use a power metric to actually pull the data in from each platform and then add them and total them in here. So let's call this one win rate. Right? And I want this to be a percentage. And this has got a trend going up, whereas if I was doing something with, say, expenses, I'd like the positive trend to be going down. So let's leave it where it is right now. So I've now got my win rate power metric, and we can change this to looking like a number, right, and do a comparison versus previous period as an example. In this case, I've got all time, so there's nothing in the previous period. But let's go and do this and add it to that power metric dashboard, which was the lead funnel. Right? And as I add it, it'll actually share it with others who've got access to that dashboard. And there is that power metric that I just created, the calculation that I've now added. And I can add this to my dashboard. So as you can see, not only can I add new content to the dashboard, change the visualizations when I'm working on them, shift all the filters that are in there, I can do comparisons, and I can start moving the content around. So if I want to move this above leads, which now it doesn't line up with where I want it, so I'll move it back down. But you can see everything is dynamic and moves around to reflect where you're trying to drag and move things. So nice flexibility working with that. So let's add that to save that dashboard, and quickly we've got that in place. So it's great at looking at a dashboard, getting a change in visualizations, even comparisons of things you want to play with. So it's not just about one funnel. We've also pre-built content to look at the email campaigns within HubSpot. Also did something similar for MailChimp, and MailChimp is one of those different services that gets used frequently with HubSpot World as well, right? What I also played around with is looking at Google Analytics, if you're going to play with Google Analytics data. And again, I could add this to an existing dashboard, or what I could say is, I don't want to add it to a parametric dashboard. I actually want to add it to a Clip dashboard. So this is taking advantage of parametrics and tying it in with the existing investments that you've made in Clips and Clip dashboards. So we are now back over on Clips, and you can see that in the toggle over in the top left here, right? And I'm working on this dashboard where I previously added a bunch of content and clips from the clip gallery for HubSpot. And there's my Google Analytics new users power metric that I've included. And love the fact that I can go in here and start changing the visualization, right? Maybe even say I want this to be segmented by channel grouping, and even start changing it to being, I could make it a table in here as well. You can also make it that heat map. You can look at it as the pie chart, even getting your donut in there. So a lot of flexibility to be able to leverage this and add this to the clip worlds. This is great for being able to bring power metrics and the investments that you've made in clips and clip dashboards together and give some great flexibility. Now think of this as if I was working with something like social media where they don't actually have the history stored in the service. The power metric will start capturing and storing that history over time, as it does with any of the power metrics we create. And that will allow you to show history on your existing clip dashboards. Okay. So let's jump back over to, actually, and in fact, what I can do from here is go back and say I can remove it, configure it, do more with it. But for the moment, let's go back into Power Metrics. Right. And I want to take a look at that analytics new user. So any one that we create, I can go look at the about information. This exists for all of the Power Metrics that we build from the pre-built Power Metrics. We've got a definition of what's in there, the calculation and formula. You can see who has actually built that Power Metric and created it. But if you've got permissions, you can also go in and edit it, see which data it's coming from, identifying which measure is being used that came from the service, but also which dimensions you want to leverage to be able to segment your data, right? And changing aggregations and more. And you can quickly go into the data source itself. In this case, I've got a model and there's the raw data, and go in and reconfigure and edit to add more content into my raw data. And so, in fact, if I wanted to go in here and connect to Google, and apologies, I probably should have done this taking advantage of the connection to HubSpot, but this is a good example to show you this off. And I want to say I want to add, GA region as an example, and submit that. There we go. There's the data. So I've now created that region. Can save this, right, and then go and update the model that's related to it, so that I can reflect the fact that I've now got a new dimension. Right. And let's just go and fix this. So that was the new users. I've got the new dimension, which I want to be region, and we will name it as just region. Right. And now if I go back to taking a look at my Power Metrics themselves and take a look at that Google Analytics Power Metric, I now have the option of adding region to the Power Metric, and I can keep it moving. Right. So that was a big effort of taking you an overview of what Power Metrics are all about, the opportunity that you've got with it. Let's jump back to the presentation for a few minutes. So as a quick recap, what we saw is that we added Power Metrics from HubSpot. We then went and started playing around with a dashboard that had content that had been previously built in from HubSpot. Could change the visualizations. We added a calculated metric to this, and then we started integrating the Power Metrics with Clip dashboards. We also then took advantage of that to go under the covers and leverage our existing connections into services to be able to change and augment and enhance what was pre-built. So tons of flexibility on how you can leverage what we've done to pre-build things. So a question always comes up is, all right, I want to leverage and get more acceleration on how can we be successful. So where did we start when we looked at building out what Power Metrics we have pre-built into the gallery so you can find them? Big thing that we've started working with is what's called Metrics HQ. So this is at klipfolio.com/metrics. And this is a great way to start getting community contributed metrics and understanding what people care about, right? Also has the definitions and more. So as an example, if I jump over into the Metric HQ, sessions is an example of a metric that we were looking at. So sessions, HubSpot sessions by source was the one that we were using. So right up on the Metric HQ, you've got that definition I talked about. In many cases, we're also trying to capture benchmarks so you can get a sense of what would make sense to be thinking about as what would be good or what would be useful to aim for. We've also got the calculations in here, but that ability to link to and connect to and add multiple different metrics related to this topic of sessions is fantastic. Now, if you're in here, you could either click on the HubSpot sessions by source and add it to your account right away, or it would also start a trial if you want to start a trial and play with things too. Right. But if we go back to just the core of Metric HQ, right, the home page, so to speak, right, then I can see we can start searching through things, looking at categories, looking at the top trending metrics that are being reviewed and looked at in Metrics HQ, or I can go in and say I want to look for a specific metric or a specific service and see if there are pre-built content in here already for a service like HubSpot. here's where you can also see all of what's available right off of the website. So if you go to klipfolio.com/metrics, you will get there to go and take a look at Metrics HQ. So once you've identified what metrics are out there and we've gotten some input, we then stepped back and said, all right, are these relevant for the service that we're talking about? So in this case with HubSpot, we started looking at, can we get this data from the API? And started looking at, are there any surprises? Things like, we found when we were going through things that the fields that you can get in the API didn't necessarily match the fields that were in the UI. So for example, we started building out some power metrics for visits and realized afterwards they're actually called sessions in the UI. We also looked at doing the same thing for raw views, which is what comes through in the API. In the UI, it's actually page views. Right? We also looked under the covers to see how do we get data from these places, these APIs. So one of the things we found is in the analytics API, the results that we get back only give us one dimension per call, which meant I couldn't get more than one dimension at a time, which is why you'd see things like leads by source, leads by location, and so on. And we also wanted to start converting that stuff to tabular. So I've actually built out a blog that's up on the Klipfolio website as well, called The Journey to HubSpot Metrics. And if you skim through it here, you can see that same story I just walked through. There's sessions, that same conversation that we showed up on Metrics HQ, looking at some information from HubSpot on how they define it, where we found that the UI was showing sessions instead of visits, right? And even got further into looking at what are some of the variations on the endpoints, right? So pagination, the records per page, the maximum records per page, how they actually call out or define how many records per page, count versus limit, and so on. So we tried to spend some time digging through what would you experience when going through it, even taking the results sets that are coming in and how we would take the name of a node in a JSON structure and actually turn it into a value you could use as part of your metric creation process. And at the very tail end of this blog, we touched on what we would do differently when we're building a data source that's specifically for a metric versus what we might do for a clip. Since metrics do store history and over time love the detail and the granularity, we typically go more detailed. There may not be as much history because we're still working within data sources, but over time it does grow and it expands. But we also want to look for that dimensionality, add more dimensions where appropriate, and look at the number of measures, typically fewer at the time. So whereas with a clip, I might want to have many metrics that I want to compare in a single view, I typically have one per metric in a power metric. Right? So just to give you a sense where we started to explore and expand things. But as we said earlier, nothing is ever in isolation. So with that HubSpot data, we have found that you are using HubSpot data with a large number of other services, right? And starting at Google Analytics and going around the clock, that represents the percentage of our customers that use HubSpot that are also using other services, in fact, these ones. So where you've got more than 70% of our customers that are using HubSpot also use Google Analytics, it's more like about 20% are also using Salesforce with Klipfolio. So this is showing that our customers are leveraging the hundreds of services we already connect to in conjunction with HubSpot as well. But if we turn around and look at not just the Klipfolio approach to expanding and leveraging services, HubSpot's doing the same thing, right? Their HubSpot Connect ecosystem has over 300 services or applications that are part of the ecosystem. So we started looking at, well, what are the HubSpot customers typically using? And based on feedback we got from HubSpot, looking at their statistics they've been sharing about their marketplace, it does look like the top 20, we already do have a connection with the vast majority of them, right? And MailChimp was one of those. It wasn't the top services that was identified, but it is one that is a top service related to the HubSpot ecosystem. So we spent some time and attention there as well, right? All that to show that we're just spending the time trying to make things a lot easier. So before we just wrap up, I did have one more poll I wanted to share with you. One thing I'm interested in is based on what you saw there with the pre-built power metrics. I am continually looking for feedback. I'd love to get your sense for, do these kinds of power metrics that we've worked at already resonate with you for how you want to leverage data coming in from HubSpot, right? So looking to say, do these look good? Are these ones that you want to try and take advantage of? Are these things that you'd say, maybe there's some changes that you might see based on what you've seen so far? Or, you know, we didn't hit the mark with ones you cared about, but there might be others that are more relevant for you. So I'll give you a moment just to respond back to this question about power metrics. All right, I'm going to end the poll there and share the results with you. General feedback is, it looks like we're kind of hitting the mark there, and you're looking forward to trying them. What I'd love to do is actually ask that as kind of an action or a takeaway from this. I'd love to see if you would try out the pre-built power metrics that we've created. You know, as you saw, we've done them in a way where there should be some good view of the overall funnel for leads as well as for emails, and more power metrics or pre-built power metrics will come. Love to get your feedback. So send it to me directly, and I'll share my email address in a moment, or share it directly with us at feedback@cliffolio.com. The other piece I'd like to throw out is, you know, I'd love to see if any of you are interested in getting featured. We have 200,000 subscribers to our blogs. And that's a great opportunity to get visibility out there, either for what you are building. And as we saw earlier, many of you on this call are actually partners. So if there's opportunities that you're interested in to give us a quote or a spotlight, where we do basically a story with you, or if you've got ideas that you want to try and submit things up in Metrics HQ. In fact, if you go to Metrics HQ on the website and submit a new metric for a content that you'd like to see up there, like new metrics, you'll get recognition for actually being the one who submitted that metric to Metrics HQ. So you'll get your some visibility up there as well. But the big thing I'm looking for is, I'd love to understand what HubSpot metrics you are looking for and what you're interested in. So with that, I'd love to just kind of wrap things up and open the door for a Q&A. I've got one of my colleagues here, John, has been monitoring the Q&A panel for me, and looking forward to hearing anything. Okay. So if you would, if you've got any questions that you would like to ask, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to press that and bring it back and submit your question, and then we can use that as something to talk to. So one question I did get earlier in a different way was, are we building power metrics or pre-built power metrics for other services? The answer is yes. You saw me with MailChimp as well as the HubSpot content. What I then turned around and I didn't show you the other ones that we've got in there. There's a vast majority of them. So a question came up is, what's the additional cost for power metrics? Right now, power metrics are actually getting rolled into plans that people have right now. Most of the focus you've seen on our pricing models is around dashboards, and power metric dashboards are counted up as those dashboards as well. So it's a combination of clip dashboards and power metric dashboards. Right now, you did see that there were two variations. One, because on a power metric dashboard, I wanted the ability to be able to have that common or shared filters that can just automatically get added, and all of the power metrics that are on those dashboards will automatically reflect and respond to them. When I add them over into clips, I still wanted that flexibility to leverage power metrics and combine that with that flexibility to create that custom dashboard with clips on the clip side. So both of those still count up, but it is very dashboard centric. Okay. So that was a good question. A second question came up. It was, again, partner-centric, saying, you know, if we're making it that much easier for people to get power metrics and dashboards and power metric boards built, is that taken away from partner activity? And it's interesting. I've been in the analytics world for 25, actually longer than that, years now. when working with Klipfolio, as well as working with Cognos before that. And in all of my interactions with partners, like there's always an evolution of functionality within tools where we do continually make things easier and easier. What I did find invariably is we're never going to hit the mark on everything. And also, no matter what we do, there's always going to be some spot where somebody wants to do data preparation or get the right data in. And customers and the business users are not very savvy about getting into APIs and understanding where the data is coming from a lot. So even though we've got some pre-built power metrics that are in Klipfolio, there's definitely not going to hit 100% of what people want. There's tons of room here for partners to be able to add value, add your context and insights to your customers and your clients to be able to create value for them and continue to build out your business model. In fact, what I'd like to do is continue to do more of that. For those partners that are out there, we do have a special Slack channel or Slack workspace that's been created with partners where we actually do share leads and context. So when customers are asking for, hey, I'd like to do more work with Hubspot, we do tend to turn around and share that with our partners and actually give you guys some insights or opportunities to raise your hand to say you'd like to participate. So I don't see the value that partners bring disappearing. In fact, I see it growing because we will get more business users interacting and working with things. But I do see a lot of value there that our partners add to the overall story for our customers. All right. With that, I'm going to say thank you again for all of your time. I would love any feedback. Like I said, feel free to send me an email directly if new questions come up after we've wrapped up the presentation here, either myself or feedback@klipfolio.com. If you've got questions around your plan in particular and more to understanding about how power metrics fit in with what you've currently got, please feel free to also reach out to success@klipfolio.com. So with that, again, thank you for your time and attention, and I hope you all have a good day. Bye now.